Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wingcat Sports. Today is our NFC North breakdown for Week 17. For the most part, right, there was a couple big games in the division, and then Chicago's game, which was big to them until they got eliminated from playoff contention after a Green Bay win and LA win kind of knocked them out. But they did win. They showed a very good game against the Falcons, 37-17. They won. Justin Fields is showing that he is a QB that should stay there. He threw for 240 yards, threw a TD, ran for another 46 and another rushing TD.
Right. It's hard to tell what these teams are like, especially this time. Yeah, I'm not even sure if Atlanta, is given up by this point. I know they were still in it.
They are still in it. They can win their
because
division.
They play in such a horrible division, but I think they're pretty much gone with New Orleans or Tampa Bay being the lone representative of that division. Either one. I'd like to, but Chicago. I think next year is going to be a very tough division. Our division is going to be tough. Anybody pretty much could come out of it, depending upon what happens in the offseason and who they pick up. I'm glad to see Justin Fields doing better. I always liked him. It just seemed like he wasn't getting the proper coaching or whatever it was, or figuring out. I mean, he certainly didn't have much talent on the offensive line in front of him. The guy was running for his life 9 times out of 10. So it's just hard to develop like that. And it's a good sign for him. Hopefully, like I said, he'll take off next year, except for when he plays us.
He only has really one good receiver. He's over 70% completion rating, has 8 TDs and 0 interceptions to DJ Moore. Everybody else is a 60% completion rating with 8 TDs and 7 interceptions. Wow. When he throws to anybody else. So he has his one target who he's really good with, and everyone else is kind of Yeah. So maybe getting him some receiver help.
Or he needs to develop and get better. He certainly has a good tight end.
Yes, he does. Cole Kmet is not that bad.
He's pretty good. And, that's probably what they're going to do in the offseason is get him a little more help. But he's got to develop. I mean, you got to have, I don't know. Sometimes not everyone it takes a while for some people to get it. And in the NFL, maybe that's just not feasible anymore to give these guys time.
The other game that we had going on in the NFC North last night, Sunday Night Football, was Green Bay and Minnesota. Green Bay ended up winning 33-10, making us feel like that is the lone possibility wild card wise out of the NFC North. With Minnesota taking that loss, they're technically not out of playoff contention, but a lot has to happen for them to make the playoffs now, including beating us next week. But Jordan Love did not have a bad day at all. He was 24 for 33, threw for 256 yards, at 3 TDs to 0 interceptions, while the Vikings QB struggled. Jaren Hall, the rookie, started. He was 5 for 10, 67 yards and interception. They ended up benching him, bringing in Nick Mullins, who threw for 13 for 22 for 113 yards. Minnesota just couldn't figure it out yesterday. And that's why we don't know if we should be worried about Green Bay or if it was just Minnesota faulting.
Right. I think Green Bay. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. Minnesota hasn't already, basically cashed it in. They certainly, like I said, they just need a quarterback. They have a great receiving core, a lot of weapons. They get a quarterback on that team, they're instantly probably the favorite next year if they get anybody who can manage that team. I think, like I said, we got lucky in that sense that Kirk Cousins went down early. Not that we couldn't have beaten Kirk Cousins, but it certainly would have been much.
It probably would have more come down to this week's game than
probably
than before.
It would have been a lot tougher. I think, like I said, Green Bay is looking better and better. I think again they're a lot like everybody else in our division. It's going to be a tough division next year. The more Jordan Love develops, I am not looking forward to playing these guys in the playoffs. A lot of people go, "Oh, they're not," they beat us on Thanksgiving. I think Jordan Love is playing with a lot more confidence. We really don't have an easy matchup in the first round of the playoffs.
No matter who we end up facing,
play the Rams or we're going to play Green Bay. That's probably
depending on it. And we'll get more into the playoff scenarios.
Will give us a ton of trouble.
We'll get more into playoff scenarios after we go through all the games. But when it looks, the last game, obviously, we went over it a bunch already. And if you want to go more into detail, we'll listen to what we said more into detail. You can go check the other 2 videos that came out this week. But the Lions losing to Dallas 20-19 off of a bad penalty at the end of the game. It seemed like the refs weren't paying attention. But again, if you want to go more into detail on that, you can look at the other videos. We don't really need to go back into that tangent.
It's ad nauseum. It's all over YouTube. You can watch it. It's pretty obvious they made an error. The question is whether it's intentional or not, whether Jerry Jones or the league is rigged or something. And I'm honestly, I don't know. It seems awful shady at times that, and everything the Lions said made sense. Of course, they're going to send, more than one offensive lineman. They don't want to know Dallas to know until the last second who's eligible, and they don't have to tell them until they line. And so, everyone's going, well, why did 3 go over there? Well, because they don't want to give away what they're doing.
Yep.
He's not going to jump up and down and say, I'm the one that's going to get some ball. But it was obvious. He looked right at Taylor Decker.
Yep, he did.
And I can't see how Taylor Decker, a veteran who was told just a moment ago by his quarterback, go report, didn't report. It makes no sense.
Yep, but there's nothing we can do about it now. It affects the seeding a lot. It affects who we're going to play a lot because it's going to come down to these playoff seedings. Our 2 games next week are both divisional. You have the Lions versus the Vikings. It will be at 1:00 on Sunday. That's what was announced. Lions are favorited, of course, in the game. I don't know what Minnesota's going to do. Their playoff lives hinder on a lot of different things happening. They could still try very hard to spoil, but no matter what, the Lions are in the 3rd spot, and we're either going to be playing one of 2 teams, depending on the other results that happened that week, which is the Packers playing the Bears. And if the Packers can't beat the Bears, then we're going to probably play the Rams. If the Packers win, we are going to play likely the Packers, depending on what happens with LA.
My question to you is, do we sit people this week? Do we give Teddy Bridgewater a chance to play?
I feel like they might rotate people more this week than they.
Do we risk players like Montgomery and Gibbs? Well, I mean, they got to play some, I suppose.
I think there's going to be more rotation than there usually is.
Certainly should be.
The bright side even though last night they got completely walloped, where they beat up on Minnesota, Green Bay is still fairly injured. They got a lot of guys. They got Reed, Dillon. They're both hurt. They have their top wide receivers are hurt. Their running backs are banged up. And they're missing a lot on defense with Alexander getting suspended for yesterday's game. So we'll see how he bounces back off of that, or how much he actually plays after his little fiasco of acting like a captain when he wasn't the captain. But, the Packers are favorited. It is in Green Bay. If Green Bay wins, they are in. And they will be the 7th seed. If LA wins, if LA doesn't win, they will be the 6th seed, and you will be facing Green Bay in the playoffs.
I think LA is going to have a good chance because I'm sure San Francisco is going to be sitting a lot of players. There's no point for they have it locked up. Why would you risk? Of course, like I said, if they do that, then they're risking the fact that their players aren't going to be playing for 2 weeks. If they sit people like Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuels, who's basically struggled with injuries all year. I don't know what the answer is in those situations. Some people say you shouldn't rest them at all. Keep them in the game.
I expect more rotation. I don't think they'll be in as much.
Right. I think you'll see everybody. So there's a chance that Matt Stafford does pull it off in San Francisco and wins. Because they need that game.
There is a
they don't
chance.
need it, but they need. They probably like.
Depending on who they want to face, would they rather go into Dallas or would they rather come to Detroit? Now, there's still a chance, like with the seeding being messed up from the Lions' weird loss to Dallas.
Well, here's another rig thing. If you want to talk about it, because everyone is saying that they cost us the game in Dallas because they want us to face Matt Stafford for a storyline. So does the NFL control that? We'll see. We'll see if we end up playing that.
So how everything will have to happen. So technically the Lions could still get second place if Dallas loses to Washington this week. And you end up winning, right? You would get second place. All you need is Dallas to lose to Washington. You win. You move up to second place.
All that's possible too. All that is, I don't think that I think the Rams can beat San Francisco, especially because San Francisco has nothing to play for.
I don't know if you get the tiebreaker against the Eagles now with losing to Dallas. But overall, I believe they probably do have a somewhat of a tiebreaker now compared to when before we could just have won out and
Right.
had it. So I don't know if the Eagles ending up winning the. I think we're kind of stuck at second, and both the Eagles and Dallas will have to lose for us to get second place.
So we're kind of
So
stuck at 3. We're happy at 3. People be happy. Don't worry about it. I'd like to get out of this Minnesota game unscathed, of course, like as
yes,
healthy as possible going into the first week against into Green Bay. Or not into Green Bay, but Green Bay coming here.
yeah,
Um,
there's still
or
a lot of random teams alive too, though, which is weird. Like we don't know technically who we are going to play. It's probably either the Rams or Green Bay is the likely option because the Rams are 9-7. Green Bay loses, Seattle hops in potentially, or New Orleans can hop in. With a very weird set of ties happening. Minnesota somehow still has a chance to hop into that final spot if a lot of weird stuff happens.
right.
But they're likely not. Minnesota's likely gone. New Orleans probably won't be a wild card, but they at least could potentially host a home playoff game, winning the division. And same thing with Seattle. If Green Bay loses, Seattle will just hop right over them. And then you're going to end up facing LA. But likely playoff scenarios is going to be, I think we're going to probably end up playing Green Bay. You're going to have to face Green Bay again. I don't know if I like that. I feel like I'd rather play the Rams than the Packers right now.
I
But
certainly think Chicago can beat Green Bay, and I
they
certainly
can.
think that the Rams could beat 49ers. I certainly think Washington can beat Dallas in Washington because I think they've always had a rivalry. Those two, they'd love to knock them off. Dallas is strange. It's a strange team. They're capable of playing amazing football and putting up gobs of points, but they're also capable of playing like utter crap.
Now
So
the Eagles. So let's see. We look at that second place. So let's say Dallas does lose to Washington. The chances the Giants beat the Eagles in New York is what you have to look at. And the Eagles are struggling. They just lost to the Cardinals. They had a close game to the Giants already. They lost to the Seahawks. They lost to the Cowboys. Got blown out by the 49ers. Almost lost to the Bills. Almost lost to the Chiefs. They have not had a convincing win, I'm going to say, since they beat the Dolphins 31-17 in October. They were only beat the Commanders by 1 score. They only beat the Cowboys by 5. They beat the Chiefs by 4. They beat the Bills by 3, and then they got blown out by the 49ers, blown out by the Cowboys, lost at the last second to the Seahawks, and then barely beat the Giants and Cardinals.
I think it just shows
Well,
you
beat
that
them.
as much as we complain about the Lions, all these teams, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Dallas, all these teams that are supposed to be better than us have all gone through the same thing this year, gone through bad periods. We're going through a bad period. The nice thing about us is we're getting healthy at the right time. That's what I'm trying to feel positive about. Um, I'm still kind of a same old Lions fan, but I have to admit that this has been a different regime, a different feeling altogether. We feel like a team that's actually being built to win. That winning is a priority, which I've never felt during the previous Ford uh, regimes. Um, so that's the biggest difference. Is Sheila Hamp seems to want to win. She seems to have really built a good organization, and hopefully we can only get better.
Yep, and like I said, making the playoffs is going to be good. Having that home
Great.
playoff game is going to be good. I'd rather just play Stafford than Green Bay right now. Both are going to be difficult to beat in the playoffs, but we'll go more over that once we figure out who we're playing in the playoffs at the end of this week. Hopefully, we're getting people back. Both Johnson and Gardner Johnson and Houston are coming off IR soon, so they might be back for the game just to get them a little bit of rest before the playoffs. don't be surprised that they're good to go, that they play, just to get them a little warmed up and get some game action in, because that's what I could expect. You don't want them going into the playoffs a little rusty. Give them that game action if they're ready to go.
No, yeah.
If
I
not,
think it's like I said, that's what I'm so encouraged about, is seeing these guys come back. Hopefully they can contribute something, even a play. I mean, Gardner Johnson is a ball hawk.
and even Houston off the edge last year, he had almost as many sacks as Hutchinson, and he played in like 8 less games. So if he can come back and he can play well too, then you're going to be good going into the playoffs, going into the game against Minnesota. If you can be going 12-5 is acceptable.
How is Irvin doing? Is he still hurt?
Yeah, they just haven't called him up all the time, because
Okay.
he can only call someone up 3 times before you actually have to sign him.
Oh, they don't want to sign him.
They don't want to sign him.
That makes some sense. Yeah,
So I don't know if he was. I think he was up against the Cowboys, but that
could
was
they bring him in for the playoffs?
probably the same rules. You have to sign him, but
He did pretty good as one stint that I saw him.
yes, he did. But it will be interesting, and we'll get more into it as we see what's going on. With all that being said, though, if you like what you see, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Share that video around. And until next time, hope to see everybody soon.